Hello and welcome to another episode of the Global Campfire of Coaching. This is an ongoing global discussion where we create inspiration, community, and mastery with and for coaches. And today we have a very special guest from South Africa, and his name is Yendor Felgate. Yendor is the CEO and founder of the Being Human Group Africa. He has over 20 years of executive experience working across Africa and the Middle East. He has led on complex multi-country implementation projects across multiple industries. He's a successful entrepreneur, an award-winning HR leader and coach, and one of the few accredited lead HR auditors of the SABPP. He's currently completing his Ph.D. and is a fellow of the Institute of Leadership and Management in the UK. Yendor is also a Gallup Certified Coach and approved trainer for the Gallup Accelerated Strengths coaching course. So Yendor, very warm welcome to the campfire. We're glad to have you.
Thanks, Fabian. I'm delighted to be here. When you reached out with your invitation, I'm very happy to participate. And I'd like to, and if I am able to, share some of the things that we're doing from a coaching perspective across the Africa piece. So happy to be here. And if folk can learn from us, then that would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the hope. And so let's get right into that. So I know that the virus and the protective measures came to South Africa a little more recently than to some other corners of the world. From what I gathered, your government actually put they were pretty stringent in what they put forth. They didn't just go piecemeal. They put in measures in place 2-3 weeks ago. And so what I'm interested right now would be, what was life before for you? What are some projects that you're doing across Africa?
Yeah, no, and thank you for that. You're absolutely right. So our government 2 weeks ago put in very stringent lockdown conditions. They've just extended that, so we still be working from home till at least the end of April. Our thinking is that probably from there on they'll ease the restrictions, and we're probably looking to mid to late May where things may return to what I would call the new normal. The very interesting disruption we've seen in South Africa in particular, and across some of the African countries we're working, is that the new normal is not going to be like the old normal. So we're all prepared that the type of thing that you and myself are doing at the moment is going to be very much the vogue and the continuation of that. Prior to the pandemic, I think as BHG, Being Human Group, we entered the year very much on a positive front foot basis. We primarily work with individuals, teams, and leadership. We're both a business-to-business organization where we help with consulting and helping people understand strengths and using strengths from a culture and employee experience point of view, plus also working with individuals around particularly coaching. We work with assessments, we work with coaching, we do a lot in the education space around what we would call training in our world. We do consulting, and then we do some of the analytics using the Gallup research. So if you can imagine January 2020, we were streaming into a new year, thinking that we were going to watch the Olympic Games, and we had a wind from the back, and we were going great guns. Typically, our business was based on very much, as you would understand from most coaching businesses, heavily on that one-to-one, face-to-face relationship type of approach. So our clients, we knew intimately. We would spend lots of time with our clients. We did a lot of face-to-face facilitation and a lot of face-to-face consulting. Pretty much what our clients had always been grown up as what consultants did. Consultants come to your office, they offered and designed solutions for you, they helped with implementation, and they did coaching face-to-face because technology was there and everybody had been talking about technology, but that hadn't hit the market yet. Suddenly, literally, the pandemic and the lockdown comes, and that entire way of working, we just had to switch off. I mean, literally, it switched off overnight. 4:30 on the Thursday, we were into the new world, whether we liked it or not. So, pretty much a traditional consulting approach prior to the pandemic.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, that dynamic. And what I'm thinking about right now, what I've seen of Africa is a drop in the bucket, right? I've only been to a handful of countries, but the experience that I've made in Kenya and some other countries is that what more valued than anything else is this human-to-human connection and this being physically present with each other. There's Uber in Kenya, and you enter where you are and where you want to go. And usually in New York or wherever, you would expect the guy to show up because he can see you on the map and everything.
Yeah.
In Kenya, they usually call you and ask you, hi, how are you doing? Where are you? How do I get there? Just to establish a bit of a relationship and kind of hear it straight from you where you are, because technology is something that can be helpful, but if you have human interaction, that's always to be preferred. So I'm really curious how, if at all, like you're saying, this change in how we have to interact is whether that's going to have any lasting impact or whether things are going to go right back to where they were.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that there are two types of market that we're thinking about. Yeah, one is that there's certain tiers in Africa where the market for, say, coaching is quite developed. So Kenya and East Africa, I think, has a lot of coaching happening at the moment, whereas maybe in comparison, Uganda and Tanzania would be quieter. So some markets are quite educated about coaching. South Africa, Nigeria, perhaps, Ghana to a lesser extent, and Kenya, people are okay with coaching. So that's the first issue, is that we can't even assume people in the rest of the African countries really understand what a coach does. So a large part of what we do normally, and it's really ramped up now with the pandemic, is we're trying to educate people on the value of coaching, that during times of change and disruption, what you really want to do is be mindful for where you are, how this thing is going to impact, what could be anticipated in the future, and what you can actually bring to the party that could contribute to how you navigate these things. And so what we're trying to do is educate a lot of people at the moment in terms of what the power of coaching is. These are the types of questions you should be asking during times of disruption. So that's the sort of the one element. And we can use social media and Skype and Zoom to do a lot of things like webinars. We just ramped up our education part of the process, and we're offering huge amounts of coaching collateral free to the market so people can engage. Where people really understand coaching, we're reaching out to them, and we're turning up what we call turning up the volume on the interpersonal relationship side. And so that means we're having tons of power for conversations with people around, so hey, where are you at the moment? How are you feeling? What are you doing? How's lockdown? And all the jokes about having to now get on with your spouse for 4 weeks in a row without being able to go outside. All these things, the tension, the anxiety, the angst. We're just being human beings with other human beings, and that I don't think is different from Africa to anywhere else. So what we have found, though, is to build new relationships. It's taking longer, but we continue to do that. With existing relationships, we just really being deeply caring around how we nurture that. So we've actually turned off our sales, sort of a selling approach, and we're saying, listen, first, let me value you as a human being. Let me check where you are. What value can I offer you? Because we know that there's a cycle, almost like a loss cycle here, is that you lose your freedom. You got to get your grips with the new normal. You start to really engage with that. You now have watched all the next Netflix you can now watch, and you now need to think about the next thing. And so it's really been for us to try and catch the cycle of people's emotions. And the only way we can do that is by keeping talking to people. And I think the successful folk that we have around us, our coaching community, are those that are trying to time their conversations with the needs of their clients as it goes forward.
Yeah, for sure. And I really appreciate that approach that you just detailed, with appreciating people as human beings first and kind of connecting on that level, and not trying to push them into, hey, and by the way, do you want to buy something? Because they're just not in that mindset right then and there.
Fabian, to give you the reality check, when we check in, we learned a couple of interesting things about what was happening. First of all, everybody was shocked and horrified, but yet they had to get through month end. Then for many of our clients, they had to get through year end. Now they've got to grips with setting up their home, and now they're starting to breathe and able to think. Now, if you don't catch them in the right cycle of that event, I think you can really annoy people, or they will just ignore you. So we tend to have turned down the volume of certain activities.
What I've been sort of grappling with is this question. I see a lot of coaches online saying, I'm donating my entire time now, or I'm donating this and this many hours now. And to a degree, I'm also part of that through a company that I work for that is volunteering hours, and I signed up for that program. And I'm just wondering in how far our industry, our profession, is obliging us to do that, and in how far it is still okay to ask for money for certain things because we're still providing value. It's something that's a little dicey.
Well, I think every business, not just coaching profession, all businesses are trying to get the balance right between what is our contribution to sustainability and helping people, but what is also our requirement to keep the doors open, feed our own families, and make sure that we're sustainable. And I don't think anybody's really got the balance right or knows exactly where that balance lies. The second thing I would say, for me, coaching is a value proposition, and in that sense, I don't think we ever have to apologize for the fact that we run a business and that we are commercial. Nobody's saying that you should be 100% commercial and not give back. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I don't think we should ever apologize. We are a valuable service. Call centers don't apologize for being call centers, and doctors don't apologize for charging you during the pandemic either. So, I think we can take that or far backs in terms of that. What I do think is important is the fact that we do contribute, we do offer a lot of value to the market free where we are required. But for me, the better question is helping people to understand why they should actually be talking to a coach right now. Without them understanding that question, whether you offer something for free or not is not valuable to people because they don't have that understanding. So we're spending more time in going, guys, the reason why you want to talk to us as coaches is because this is what we can help you with. We can help you think through stuff. We can help you understand and deal with the emotion of disruption. We can help you with the fear and anxiety of not knowing what's coming. In our market, for example, we've hit our first major redundancies. Is how do we help people segue from work to not work and to really make sure that they understand how they can get back on their feet and contribute. That to me is a better set of questions than worrying about selling coaching or giving stuff away for free, because free means nothing if you don't know what you're acquiring or getting access to.
Yeah, I love that. That makes total sense. Just to kind of put it in the bigger perspective. Yeah, for sure. So we got a little bit of time here, and I really wanted to check in with you because you're an expert on it, and you're the only institution doing this training in Africa, on the whole continent. I really wanted to check in with these certifications that you do, like the Gallup StrengthsFinder, because I have to admit that I sort of, as a baseline, I'm kind of skeptical about assessments. If they're not put, like you just said with the other topic, if they're not put in the right context, they can run the danger of putting labels on people, on putting people in boxes, and some people kind of take receiving an assessment as the end of it. That's the end of the discussion.
Yeah.
And so I'm really curious for you to kind of explain what the Gallup StrengthsFinder is, what kind of the idea behind it is, and why it's something that is the start to a journey rather than just this is it.
Yeah, no, I thanks, Fabian, and you're absolutely right. There is such a lot of controversy, I suppose, to put it politely, around particularly the use of psychometrics, that your sort of instinctive feeling of discomfort is probably right. The best way of thinking about Gallup and what we're trying to do with Gallup assessments and our coaching is to go back to really the approach. So discount or put the assessment to one side for a moment and really start to think a little bit about what is fundamentally underpinning the Gallup approach. And that is really what the pioneering work that Don Clifton did in establishing positive psychology. So positive psychology really starts to look at what people can contribute. And so the fundamental starting point is that we all have talent. That could be immature strength, or it can be mature inner strength. And Don Clifton's view is that if you just look at what people can contribute and you develop their talents, you're going to get exponential performance, as opposed to worrying about what they don't have, then doing a traditional gap analysis and then filling the gap. And so his view is, as per positive psychology, is the glass is more than half full. You have wonderful talents that you can bring to the party as a human being. Can you imagine, if you use your talents effectively, how much better you can perform or achieve or try and seek the goals that you're putting on the table? And so the assessment should be seen in the context of that. So the assessment measures the possibility or the dominance of 34 talents that Gallup research indicates that most of us have access to. Number one being your most dominant, your number 34 being your least dominant. We're not going to worry too much about your 34, but we're interested really in your top 10, the ones that you use all the time. And if we can develop and focus and really enable you to use that, you're going to be far more successful. And that's why we use the assessment. So you can't fail the assessment. We can't tell whether you're an axe murderer from the assessment or not. All we're asking is, what could you potentially be great at? If that resonates with you, we start with a coaching process that says, listen, let's concentrate on that. Let's really intentionally use that to achieve the goals that you're setting yourself for this coaching session. And we just see, and the research indicates that people are much more successful using that approach. Now, immediately people then say, well, hold on, do weaknesses now, do we just ignore them? No, we don't. If you need to know Excel spreadsheeting, then go on the program. Nobody's stopping you from doing that. But how you are going to use Excel, Strengths will give you a version or an insight to that. So the assessment is used to understand what you bring to the party. It gives you insights into the power and edge of what you bring to the party. And then it helps us, as from a coaching process point of view, is to then sort of add a strengths filter to the coaching that's going to come down the line. So in that context, the assessment we think is very positive. Our experience with using it is 99% of the time it resonates with people. They go, oh yeah, no, that's definitely me, and I'm okay with that. Sometimes they tend to want to wonder what some of the things mean. Whereas in my experience in my previous roles where we had a Myers-Briggs or a psychometric, we spent 3/4 of the time trying to argue about whether it was valid and whether we were using it in the right way and whether this box was meant for them. Whereas when you have 34 strengths and you have 1 in 33 million chance of having the same top 5 as somebody else, and the permutations are endless to how you can combine and use these things, nobody worries about boxes. So my number one strength, for example, is achiever, which is an execution strength. So I like to get things done. And I get immense energy from completing stuff. Doesn't mean success in that sense. If I keep completing stuff, man, that makes me happy, but that's not the entire Yendor that you see. And so it can give you a wealth of complexity and insight to what human beings are all about. If you see assessment as contribution and positive, and it's a talent to build on, then I think assessment has a valuable role to play in that. From a Gallup perspective, we like the Clifton Strength Finder assessment because it's strength-based, but we also, as Ph.D, use other things. So sometimes we would look at an Enneagram or an insights profile in combination with strengths, because the more insight that you can get as a coach, I think the better your coaching is. And as long as you're using it as a positive affirmation for what the person brings to the party, assessments becomes, I think, less controversial or less political. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
It absolutely does. The mindset behind that, I completely appreciate. And that it's not so much about this tool and this is the be-all, end-all, but it's really about facilitating insight for the client, right?
The other nice thing about, Fabian, what we really bring to the party from a Gallup perspective is that we're not looking for well-rounded, perfect people that can be all things to all people, or all things to all situations. What we're looking at is, how can you be the best version of you? So it's a uniqueness approach. It's not, I'm not coaching Fabian as I would coach any of the other clients because you're unique to being Fabian. And I think that's quite a powerful message as well. A lot of our clients really struggle to let go of this fact that I have to be perfect. Or they've been brought up in such a way that they don't get enough validation or feedback to say that they're fantastically powerful, unique individuals in their own right. And that's why I think strengths or positive psychology and a coaching process really is a greatly reinforcing paradigm for people that going, well, I don't have to be all things to all people. What I bring to the party is enough, and often we get told it's not, but it is. And to drive that a message and a coaching process that resonates with them as a specific human being, we think that's quite powerful.
It is, especially nowadays in the age of social media, where we see all these streamlined versions of other people that seem to have it all figured out and seem to be so perfect. And why can't I get off my couch, or why can't I get my life together?
That's why I loved when you sent me the prep stuff and said, listen, it's going to be warts and all, and we're going to have this powerful conversation, and it's going to be in my study and in your apartment. For us, authenticity is a big issue. And yeah, we're not always perfect, and sometimes the tech goes down, and we don't have $100 million budget for marketing, but that doesn't mean that what we do lacks impact. So love that message.
Yeah. So as we're kind of approaching the landing here, what is a message then you want to leave the listeners, the viewers with?
First of all, if I talk to my fellow coaches, guys, our job has never been more needed now across the piece. From an African perspective, we have the double legacy of having to educate people and then coach them and so forth. There are 54 countries in Africa. There are simply just not enough coaches available to be the power and edge that we need them to be. So I think in this time where you may have had a week or two when people haven't had the time to respond to you, is don't give up, don't despair. Human beings will need us, and they will come back to us. And we're starting to see the green shoots of that. People are returning phone calls as it becomes less hectic and so on. So all I would say is hang in there, power be to you. The second thing I would say to you is especially from a developmental Africa perspective, a positive approach to people has never been more needed now. Whatever your methodology or approach is, for too long we've been seeing the African continent as one where we're third world and it's, backward and all that sort of stuff. Yet we have this wonderful relationship capacity now that the world also needs it because we've all gone virtual. So as much as, so swings and roundabouts, there's wonderful talent in the continent, and it's just about us connecting and turning the volume up with that. And then the third thing really we would leave with you is really trying to explore your coaching practice and use more than one approach to this. So yes, we advocate strengths and we certify Gallup Strength coaches, but the more maturity you can have around different methods and approaches and so on, the better. So to give you some examples, we're working with clients that are starting to think about how do we do change and resilience. We're working with clients that are deeply into mindfulness now because we want to really capture the human capacity to deal with disruption and change. Other clients are just saying, listen, bring coaching on in the traditional sense. So the opportunity to be exceptionally innovative and creative now, I think, is extremely open. And so what I would really advise us to do is be open and creative, and whether it's called coaching or not, as long as you're engaging positively and trying to help others develop, I think crack on.
Yeah, beautifully said. Where can people find more about what you do?
Right. So obviously you can find myself on LinkedIn, Yendor Felgate, or you can go to our webpage, www.bhgroup.africa. So BH being human gives you a clue to what we do. So we do what it says on the box, and .africa, that's where we live and that's where we operate. You can contact us either LinkedIn or you can drop a note via you, Fabian, whatever works, or our webpage. Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned that there are some, freebies available for people listening that want to find out more and they kind of want to get their hands on some of the thinking and get a little more in depth.
Absolutely. So the nice thing about Gallup, and I always say this, beware, but I beware with a positive intent, is that there's such a huge amount of Gallup research and collateral available that we have an entire library. So if people want to get it, drop me a note and want to get more information around Clifton Strength Assessment, for example, or how Gallup sees performance or culture or experience, or more about the coaching certification, really our library is extremely big or large in terms of that. So everything from ebooks on the Clifton Strengths Finder through to the certification, through to Gallup coaching, and the huge amount of resources around how to deal with COVID-19 during this time, from what leaders should be doing, individuals should be thinking about, and what virtual teams should be operating as. We have all of that available. So it's really just ask the question. We'll send you some free stuff. Not a problem.
All right, wonderful. Yendor, I appreciate you being here so much. It was great to have your perspective. I certainly was reminded of a lot of things that in principle, I know them, but it's really good to be reminded, and that happens to me all the time recently, that there is this tension of oscillating between, between the different levels of needs. And it's
Yep.
just wonderful to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. And thank you for the opportunity, Fabian. And to all our coaches out there, be kind on yourself.